So recently my wife and I rewatched the Hunger Games series, and we were really surprised that after so much time, and believe it or not, it has been almost 9 years, it was released in 2012, since the original Hunger Games movie came out. And we were really surprised at the fact that they really hold up, and we enjoyed the crap out of them. We do yearly rewatches of a lot of series. She specifically does a yearly rewatch of Twilight for some reason, and even though I don't like them, she's not a big movie watcher, so I also do a yearly rewatch of Twilight just so we can watch the movies together. We've decided to add a yearly rewatch right along with Twilight and Harry Potter of the Hunger Games series. It got me thinking about the major cultural impact that the Hunger Games series has had on pop culture for movies, TV shows, and video games, and obviously books, but I'm not going to get into that. That's a much broader spectrum. But the books came out in 2008 to 2010, and almost immediately after, from 2012 to 2015, the Hunger Games movies were adapted and came out. So we're going to explore movies and TV shows first, in chronological order, and then move on to video games. Now in 2013, Ender's Game came out, and it was not exactly well received, but that really didn't stop other movies from coming along. Ender's Game is not exactly like Hunger Games, but it is a dystopian fiction future based around kids and teenagers adapted from a young adult novel. Granted, the novelist was Orson Scott Card, who is literally a piece of shit. You can look into him and he's just an awful human being, but we're gonna look past that. When I talk about movies that I believe are inspired by Hunger Games, what I'm really talking about is young adult dystopian fiction future generally adapted from books. Now that's a very small spectrum of things, and it's very surprising how many of them came out in such a short amount of time, in the almost 9 years since Hunger Games was released. Now The Host is another one that also came out in 2013 and was adapted by the novel of the same name from Stephenie Meyer, the author of Twilight, which I was just talking about. And it is similar to Ender's Game in the fact that it is about aliens, and it is similar to Hunger Games in the fact that it is a young adult dystopian fiction future adapted from a novel. And The Host is a little bit different, and there's a video that Amanda the Jedi does on The Host, so I'm not going to get into too much of why it's weird, because she did a wonderful video on it, and I don't need to be stepping on her toes, and she can say it so much better than I can, so please go watch that. But The Host is what came out next. Now we're going to get into things that are more obviously Hunger Games inspired very quickly here. Divergent is the big one that is very obviously Hunger Games inspired, and was released in 2014 obviously as an answer to Hunger Games to try and cash in on the huge flow of money that Hunger Games had coming in. Not only, once again, and I'm gonna say this huge long string again, not only is it a young adult dystopian fiction future adapted from a book into a movie, but it involves factions of different people that have different skill sets, so much like Hunger Games, and they are working to overthrow the government that is oppressing them. Now, without getting a blatant ripoff of Hunger Games that is literally infringing on copyright and creative material, this is about as close as you can get. And I'm gonna be honest, I myself have a book, Blackout, I have it there behind me on the shelf, that is strikingly similar to this and to Hunger Games. I was young, I was 16 when I wrote it. I might have been trying to cash in, but it is original enough. But Divergent came out, and the first one was huge. It stars Shailene Woodley, Theo James, Ansel Elgort, and Miles Teller. And at its core, it is a romance, so much like the Hunger Games. Almost every single one of these, probably every single one, has at its core a romance element, because people seem to think in Hollywood romance is what's needed in these movies and TV shows to really keep us hooked. And I'm not going to say they're wrong, because romance is kind of what keeps me coming back to these things too. I'm a sucker for it, I'm going to be honest. The thing about Divergent though is that the first one brought people in for its similarity to the Hunger Games, and the books are extremely similar as well, and they're very faithful adaptations, but it's just not as good. And as they went on, they got worse and worse and worse, until the last one, Allegiant, was a direct-to-DVD release, and these movies completely fell off from pop culture. Nobody's doing Divergent walkthroughs these days. Also in 2014, we had the release of Maze Runner, which I'm not going to say the big long string of shit again, but it is exactly that. And again, at its core, is romance. Now the Maze Runners, they were much better received than Divergent because they do have a lot more originality to them. But the striking resemblance is in the very beginning. They are trapped inside of a dome-like structure which has deadly obstacles and monsters sent after them as these teenagers are trapped in an arena, so much like Hunger Games, that was built by the government to test them, and they need to escape. Being trapped in an arena created by the government trying to kill you. Hunger Games all the way, baby. Hunger Games supremacy all the way. Now, as the movies went on with Death Cure and Scorch Trials, it became less and less like the Hunger Games, and it did follow the books, but the first one, striking resemblance, and I feel, once again, that is why it was adapted, to cash in. Next, I'm going to talk about one of my all-time favorite shows that I've referenced in so many videos in the past, and that is The 100. This is the only TV show that I have on the list, and it only recently ended. But it did premiere in 2014 in the middle of the Hunger Games movie series, and only 2 years after the very first one. And it is set in an irradiated and apocalyptic world where 100 teenagers that are delinquents are sent down to survive down there to see if humanity can live in this unlivable world for the rest of people to come down from space and live there once again. This not so similar to the Hunger Games, I will admit, but still falls within that original category that I have set out. Now we're getting to 2016 with The Fifth Wave. The Fifth Wave is arguably the least well-received movie on this entire list, besides maybe the last Divergent movie, because the first one was quite well received and it got a lot of box office attention. But The Fifth Wave is also an alien movie, and I'm kind of bummed this one didn't go well, because the book series is very good and is just that, a series, but this never got greenlit for more than the very first one. And it has Chloe Grace Moretz, who's one of my all-time favorite actresses. She's amazing in Kick-Ass, and especially Kick-Ass 2, and I feel like she just deserves more acclaim. The only other thing I think I've seen her in is Neighbors 2 with Seth Rogen, and yeah, she was hilarious in that. I come to the most recent one that I'm gonna be honest, I don't know much about because it looks so damn bad, and that's Mortal Engines, and we are getting further away from Hunger Games, but still derived from these movies that paved the path for these young adult adaptations years and years before. But as we're straying farther away, this is 6 years past the original Hunger Games and not very far from present time. So obviously things are going to start getting different. There's not as much to cash in on. So from here, we're going to move over to video games, which I'd say the battle royal of video games is directly inspired from the Hunger Games, and probably one of the most successful and coolest video game modes that has ever been developed, and I'm so happy that they directly stole this from it. Now granted, I know a lot of you are going to bring it up, and I can't believe it's taken me this long to bring it up in the video. Obviously, the Hunger Games directly stole from the Japanese movie Battle Royale. But I mean, isn't all movies and books and TV shows and games just stealing something and making it slightly your own? Now, every single one of these is strikingly similar, so I'm just going to read them off to you, okay? And I'll go into a little bit more detail when I feel it's needed. So we have, between 2015 and 2020, we have H1Z1, Fortnite, PUBG, Black Ops 4, Apex Legends, and Warzone. Every single one of them with the Battle Royale mode. H1Z1 was the first one to come out, and it had a zombie incorporation to it. And the biggest difference about that one is games could go on for goddamn infinite amount of time until they changed it, because there was no shrinking zone that made people start killing each other because they got closer. And that's something that really comes from the Hunger Games as well. If you remember in the movies, they lit things on fire if people tried to stray too far to keep miles away from the other competitors so that they wouldn't get hurt or whatever. The game master would force them closer with fireballs that he threw at Katniss and many other things. And that was something that was very smartly incorporated with Fortnite. Now, Fortnite is arguably the most popular one of these battle royales to come out. Childish animation and its building factor, and the fact that it's free. PUBG came out on PC and it was a much more lifelike and realistic look to it, and it really revolutionized it towards like that lifelike nature. But the problem was it had so many issues, and its port over to systems was utter dog shit. That is where Black Ops 4, Apex Legends, and Warzone came in. Black Ops 4 and Warzone are extremely similar, but Warzone just capitalized on what Black Ops 4 did, and it's 150 people, and you can get cash to revive yourself, and there's a gulag so that when you die, it's not the end of the world, it's not the end of the game, which is the worst part of Battle Royale. Apex Legends is different because it's teams and it's hero-based, kind of like Overwatch heroes, but with a few people dropping down together. But in the end, these games are all the same, you know? They're just the same game. At its core, it's just the same game, and it is the Hunger Games Battle Royale style. So although Hunger Games is not the original to do it, far from, there's many young adult movies and series such as Twilight and Harry Potter that paved the way for the Hunger Games. But I'm saying that the Hunger Games did so well that for nearly a decade after, people are still trying to cash in with similar games and movies and TV shows. And I'm okay with it because a lot of them are good. And it was culturally really cool to dig into and see the impact it has had. So that's it. There's the video. Do with that info what you will. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, check out my other videos.